For this video, I wanted to challenge myself to build a better Biosyn Sanctuary, just like how I built a better Jurassic Park and a better Jurassic Park San Diego. Now, my parks are normally very heavy on the guest areas, but for this one it was all about the nature and the dinosaurs. Well, and also one really awesome guest area. Hello everyone, thank you so much for checking out this Jurassic World Evolution 2 speed build video. I am absolutely loving the Dominion DLC, and for this park build, really, the map, the invisible fences, and of course the new dinosaurs are key. So what I started with was just an empty map using all of the space for this huge sanctuary, and I started just putting in like the large like geographical landmarks. I put those in first. So I have a river snaking through in one end of the park. I have two sort of mountain ranges. I have a lower area right here where, as you can see, I am putting down a lake. And that is really a key way for me to start builds like this. Just start with like the large terrain work and then sort of fine tune it further and further as we go, as opposed to starting to perfect just one tiny section and then branching out from there. This works a lot better for me. Now what I'm doing right here with a little brush texture, a stone texture, is I'm actually sectioning off different territories for the dinosaurs, because I had a pretty cool idea, pretty different idea for this sanctuary that will come into effect later, but it was really important for me to sort of plan out different exhibits. It's a sanctuary, of course, so maybe exhibits is the wrong word, but yeah, there are different territories. And now what I'm doing is I'm laying down the torrent. That's really the main attraction of this park. Just, it's one huge, enormous tor. And what I did sort of to add like that little element of realism is that I lined the entire tor track with invisible fences. That was a bit of an angling. As you can see, it was a bit of a struggle because the fence likes to snap to the track. So you really have to be patient and combat that and be as precise as possible. But what I think the effect of that is just, yeah, like I said, it's more realistic. You know, it's keeping the dangerous dinosaurs away from people who are in open vehicles, essentially. You know, a Giganotosaurus could just snatch them up out of there. So I put those invisible fences on there to protect our guests. And also what the tor track in combination with the invisible fences does is it separates those territories that I painted in previously. So you can see that I'm like following that gray rocky texture a little bit. Now I'm trying to keep the tor track as straight as possible in as many sections as possible to just make it a little bit easier on myself to line it with the invisible fences, but obviously some curvature is unavoidable. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. We're just going through the entire sanctuary. We're doubling back at certain points just so you get that nice separation of two areas, like on this side of the river over here. And I also just really like doubling back so that the tors meet up, like the tor trucks pass each other by. I think that's always a really nice effect. And yeah, just building as you do. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, if you find it inspirational, if it's helping you out, then please do give the video a like, because that helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the support on the channel so much, and I hope that I can repay you by just continuing to give you these builds that I hope will be helpful to your own park building experiences. Now, you saw me putting down some of those brand new viewing towers, which I really love because I don't need path connections and they're perfect for a sanctuary build just like this. And what I did here was I just put them like in this little loop where the tor trucks go around, just again so the guests have also a cool view of the viewing towers themselves. I'm just placing them all over the map again because they just provide so much freedom in how you can forego paths and just connect them with the hyperloop. So that is like the secondary attraction of this sanctuary, which is for people to go from one viewing tower to the next with the hyperloops. And I think that's yeah, I think it's a pretty cool build without obstructing like the natural element of it. Now, as promised, we do have one awesome guest section to work on. For this, I used my my patented monorail roof idea. I know not everybody is a fan of this, but I felt like this made sense because, as you might have noticed in the speed build so far, is we have flying reptiles on the loose. So I felt that it only made sense for the guest area to have a roof. Unfortunately, the Pteranodon really do not care about this quote-unquote roof. I was kind of hoping that it would deter them from coming over here, but they just like sitting on the buildings too much to keep them away from here. So that's a shame, but I did want to do this just for the realistic aesthetic of it. And I just gave it a little bit of an interesting shape by adding this loop to it, and by not making it a rectangle, but by cutting a bit of it out. And this loop is like the arrival point of the sanctuary. So our guests are flown in by helicopter. They land over here. You have to trust the pilot that he's not gonna slam the helicopter into those monorail tracks. But you know, he's a trained professional. He does this all the time. He flies back and forth. It's like driving a bus for him at this point. So what we're doing right now is we're going under the monorail roof. Granted, for building this can be a little bit tricky. If you want to do it in reverse, so lay down all of the buildings and the pathwork first and then build the monorail roof on top of that, or forgo the monorail roof at all, that's also possible, of course. But yeah, if you want to do it in reverse, that's also possible. I like doing the monorail roof first, just so I can see exactly where my pillars end up, and I can sort of plan which pillars I want to leave standing, and which ones I want to get rid of with either path, buildings, or some of the scenery items. Now, you might have noticed that the pathwork that I'm doing right here is sort of inspired by the Biosyn style of path art. So with like those the circular designs with little extended bits coming out. That's like a technical term. I don't know what to call it. But yeah, it was definitely inspired by that, because this is a Biosyn Sanctuary. It's just a new and improved version of it. So let's just say, like, at the end of the movie, they were like, you know what, we need to change this up a little bit. We need to do this differently. And that's sort of what the genesis of this park build was, a reformed, improved Biosyn Sanctuary, but still Biosyn. So I wanted to give it that identity with the pathwork, and I think it turned out pretty cool. It just made the pathwork look a lot more interesting than just filling in the whole area with path. And you know how much I love path. I couldn't resist, honestly. And you can see that this is dealing with a lot of the pillars. I am planning it out as carefully as I can to make sure that especially the outer row of columns keep standing. Again, for that realism. You don't want your monorail roof to be floating in the end. Now here we go, we're just placing down some buildings, some guest facilities. I went really light with guest facilities because at the end of the day, it's just one tour and a couple of viewing attractions. It's not the kind of park where, for example, there are no hotels, because it's not the kind of place where you would have overnight stays. You would come in, you would enjoy the tour, you would get like all the information and stuff like that. You'd buy your t-shirt on your way out to sort of support the cause, and then you'd be on your way home, you know, with helicopter pilot bus driver man. And now one of the best parts, honestly, one of my favorite parts, is just decorating it with some of the decorative items and the trees and such. I love just bringing it to life, and it comes to life when you do this step. You'll notice that I haven't actually built the nature for the dinosaurs yet. The dinosaurs are in at this point, but I always get distracted by the guest sections. I always find that it really inspires me to work on guest sections, so I couldn't resist getting this part of it out of the way first. But I feel like I compensated by putting in like plenty of nature into this guest section, and I really enjoyed it. And honestly, I hope that for you seeing this, that you also think, hey, you know what, maybe a monorail roof or something like that could be really cool. At the very least, it's different, and I always love trying to experiment and make things look different from usual. And I definitely think that this guest structure achieves that. Now, we have actually two sides to the guest structure, and this side of it, like the right side, is where our personnel would stay at. So I put down a hotel because I would imagine that workers don't fly back and forth every single day. Workers would spend an extended period of time in the sanctuary and, do the tours, take care of the dinosaurs, go to the compound for research, stuff like that. And now we finally arrived at arguably, honestly, the most important point of the build. Look at that kit, just flapping in place. But yeah, the most important point and aspect of the build, and that is all of the nature work. And honestly, I love this biome so much. I think it is absolutely brilliant. I will definitely be coming back here very often. Oh, I just realized that I'd forgotten to put in the control center to connect the Hyperloop, so that was a little oopsie on my part. So we interrupt our regularly programmed brush tool tree placement. Wow, I struggled with that one. To bring you Hyperloops. But now we're back to like rocks and trees and all of the good stuff. I placed a ton of rocks here, mostly as like trying to encourage the flying reptiles to come away from the guest buildings and just please come sit on this perch or come sit on these rocks. But two of the Pteranodon were just way too happy sitting on the buildings inside the monorail structure, which my guests were not happy with, but I've accepted that and I've moved on. The ADS is not working in this park. Ooh, that would be really cool if they actually bring that into the game. Anyway, that was a side train of thought. We're just continuing with the nature part of it. So I'm lining the river with sand. I wanted to go, like you see me using this rock texture. I wanted to use that as sort of the burnt down forest effect, but it just ended up looking too flat for me. So you just saw me covering most of it up with moss and stuff like that. It didn't quite work for me. It was too, I don't know, it was too empty, I guess. It felt too empty without trees. Jesus. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of trees. I do have a little tip, I suppose, for my fellow creative park builders. You might not experience the same kind of temptation in this Biosyn Sanctuary map as you would in other maps, because the individually placeable trees aren't these awesome new trees with the mossy tendrils hanging off them. The individually placeable trees are just like the Canada and the Yosemite trees, honestly. But generally speaking, you might be tempted to use the individually placeable trees for your exhibits a lot. That's perfectly fine. With one exception, and that is that it's really, really easy to hit the piece limit when you do that, because it's really, really easy to just place down a ton of the individually placeable trees. They all count as a piece, and then by the end of it, you don't have enough of the piece count left for your decorations and stuff, and, you know, your park stops working. I haven't personally run into it myself, but I have heard of other people running into it, and especially if you go overboard with the individually placeable trees in your enclosures and stuff like that, you can hit that piece limit quite easily. At least that's the word on the street that I'm getting from other people. So, you know, make the use of your tree brush tool and your foliage brush tool and all of that, and just fill in the specifics with the individually placeable trees. And that's just me rambling on and on and on, but that's just, I hope, a little tip that will help you if you are indeed experiencing that you are running into that piece count. Now, speaking of piece count, I was very generous with the rocks. But look, I love rocks, okay? And it's actually, speaking of rocks, that's one of the few disappointments of this DLC for me, and that's that the biome doesn't actually come with new rocks, as in individually placeable. They're part of the foliage brush. I was a little sad about that. I would have loved to be able to really place with purpose some mossy rocks. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. This exhibit that I'm working on right now is the Parasaurolophus exhibit, so I wanted to keep that more open. In the back you see the sauropod exhibit, where I added another big lake, because that's what we see in the movie when they see the Dreadnoughtus. It's in the water, which is a really cool shot, so I sort of wanted to emulate that. And with that approach, I sort of try to distinguish all of the exhibits or territories from one another. So the para exhibit is more sandy and is more open. The sauropod exhibit has this really big lake in it. The Spinosaurus exhibit is like the biggest lake in the sanctuary because yes, we have a Spinosaurus. Obviously, a better Biosyn Sanctuary includes a Spinosaurus. This exhibit right here is for the Pyroraptor pack, so I went with more forest, less viewing opportunities from the tour track, and a lot of the ferns, so they could sort of stalk through the ferns and be largely obscured. This is one of my new favorite things to do, actually, and it's to make a sauropod nest. So I used some of the smaller rocks and the like medium-sized boulders to create like this circular structure, which has an opening on one side, and like sort of in my head, I like play with the idea that the sauropods, when they're nesting, they spend a couple of days, you know, rolling these boulders around to build a nest like that, as opposed to a regular nest of foliage and stuff like that. I like that idea. I've used it before. It was sort of a happy accident, honestly, that brought that idea to life, and since then I really like doing it, so I did it there as well. This exhibit with the very long, thin river running through has on one territory, it's the Ceratopsians, and in the other territory we have Iguanodon and Stegosaurus. And this big lake is where you see the Spinosaurus right there on the islands. So this is the Spinosaurus exhibit. Spinosaurus doesn't share his exhibit with anything else. Same for the T-Rex, the Giga, the Therizinosaurus, because the idea behind separating the sanctuary into different territories is exactly to prevent what we see in Jurassic World Dominion, and also what they say in Jurassic World Dominion. Like they say in the voiceover, hey, if you put 2 apex predators in one valley, soon there will be only one. Well, that's probably not exactly what you want when you have a dinosaur sanctuary. You want them to live. So that's why we're separating carnivores from each other and from the herbivores. Now, I'm adding a little bit of sand to the tour track because I just really like how that looks, and that is the final stage of this awesome build, and I'm excited to show you the end result. We interrupt our regularly scheduled programming for murder. Firstly, Quetzalcoatlus will prey on other flying reptiles, but I also got many comments saying, hey Evo, Quetz will hunt hadrosaurs, and that is something I for sure wanted to see, which led to that, and this. I would like to formally say that I think Frontier is absolutely sick for this, and I love them for it. Here we have an overview of the new and improved Biosyn Valley Sanctuary. I really love the idea of having the tour track protected by the invisible fences and separating the sanctuary into several territories for the well-being of the dinosaurs. I have a proper showcase of the valley coming in a separate video because I didn't want this one to run on for too long. I hope that you'll join for that showcase video. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. The channel is growing so fast, so much, and I couldn't be more thrilled. I really hope my videos will inspire many people for their own park builds. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the game.